In the beginning, which was in the early 80s, we received a $5,000 grant from Lilly Endowment to explore and create a network of food banks across the state of Indiana. One of the things we did after we determined that there was great interest across the state was to apply for a VISTA grant. And that grant brought Craig Brenner.
The Community Action Program basically said, we're going to be the lead agency to organize a food bank in Bloomington, and they gave me the job of helping do that.
The goal was to let the local community decide if it wanted a food bank, figure out how to generate the interest and the resources, and really all Gleaners had to offer in the early days was a VISTA volunteer and 10% of the food that came in nationally to the 10 fledgling food banks.
Really, we didn't know that there was that much need for the food. We just knew that the corporate food was available out there, and we wanted to funnel that resource into Bloomington. What was amazing is we had not thought of it before.
I need to explain that the whole concept of food banking was new. I mean, it wasn't that everybody knew what a food bank was or how they operated. It was the concept that needed to be sold.
So that part we had to educate people about, and I think we did so successfully, but it was a little bit of an uphill battle at first. I remember there being some support from the city.
We wanted to make sure that we helped anybody who was trying to help somebody. And the food bank, as an example, was perfect. And then we would try to encourage them by funding them for a period of time. We couldn't fund them totally.
One of the biggest successes was if we were able to continue from year to year, because it wasn't an organization that people would normally want to donate a lot of money to. I mean, we didn't feed people directly. We provided food to organizations, and that was sort of like a middleman approach that a lot of people were skeptical of.
Everybody wondered if it was too good to be true. We all just struggled along together.
I became a VISTA volunteer in 1985, and that was full-time volunteer work for the government, paid by the government. I was a young mom at the time and concerned about hungry kids and thought food banking sounded interesting, and Craig said sign up, and so I did. The work plans really were to build the capacity to feed more people. We were really fortunate to be able to work that my first year in 1985 and build 30 food resources, and then the second year's work plan involved we didn't have enough food to send out into all those 30 outlets we developed, and so then it was going to grocery stores and restaurants, Indiana University, the hospital. It was going to the food industry itself to try to convince them about the hunger situation born out of poverty in our own community.
It was a scramble to get enough food, and then to have sufficient storage capacity and refrigeration.
We had a donated 8x12 walk-in cooler and a donated 8x12 freezer. And I do believe that the first distribution wasn't even at a location, but in a parking lot.
I believe I was invited as commissioner to come down and see what the start of the food bank. It was, as I recall, down in the Mayflower warehouse, which is no longer there. And what I remember was that it was dark. It was dark and cool, but beginning to fill with food. And I learned to know that there was a concentrated, systematic approach to trying to address the issue of hunger.
And we had to get a team of staffers that were willing to be background people. We were never going to be handing people a plate of food, really. We were always going to be moving trucks in and out of, parking lots, and really hard work. It took a special kind of employee, and I'm really proud of the early years and the work we did to form a team that could get us through the lean 80s. Dan Taylor, he was our arms and legs, and I've always called him the soul of the food bank.
And her work plan was very big, a lot of things that she needed to do, and one of the things that she was doing the daily food collection route.
I can remember going and giving speeches sometimes about hunger, and people would say, "Are you that hippie girl in the orange van that collects food at the back doors of restaurants?" And I would have to say, "Yes, that's me."
And at about halfway through her term, they realized that that was primarily what she was doing, and she wasn't recruiting volunteers and getting new donors and getting new special events. So then they decided to hire a driver, and they hired me.
Never see this moment, place and time again. If not now, tell me when.
At the end of my 3 years, the food bank was ready to hire its first full-time employee. We finally had the resources, but the board felt that after 3 years, I had some sense of the scope of an organization that they wanted to build, and so I was fortunate enough to be named the first full-time executive director at the food bank.
We had gotten our feet off the ground, and things were happening.
You know, being opportunists and going where the food was, taking what was still good and making it available to other people. A warehouse their sprinkler systems would go off, and all their food, peanut butter labels would be wrinkly on the cans or on the jars, so then they would not be able to sell them, but the peanut butter was still good. So we would have to take the labels off all those wet jars of peanut butter, and then we could distribute the peanut butter to hungry people. So a constant cycle. And it took a mindset of staffers that were willing to do that day after day.
And then every week, we'd go to Wetterow, which was a food distributor out on Curry Pike, and we would go every Wednesday, fill Boxy. Boxy holds 6 pallets. We'd have produce, bananas, a lot of freezer, short-dated product. We'd come back, we'd fill those coolers and freezers with product, and they were our largest donor by far. They announced they were going to close in like 3 or 4 months.
And we were really afraid of how we were going to feed our hungry people. We were so nervous about the loss of thousands of pounds of product that the community depended on. And it was really just kind of some thinking about, well, where is the food? If we don't have the Wetterow resources of food, is there any other food we can gather anywhere else in this community? And prepared foods were being thrown away.
And while prepared food rescue had been around for a long time, it never really suited our demographic or our service area. I had met this guy who was doing something in Eugene that seemed like it would match what we were doing. And so we decided to go out there for a week, and we basically worked. We drove, we repacked, we did everything that they did, and then we came back here. We stole every single one of their ideas. We got some grant funding, and we were off and running.
The food bank has drivers that go around to fraternities, sororities, restaurants, catering services, and places that have cooked food but not served it, so it hasn't been out. And that food then gets donated. The drivers bring it in, and 3 nights a week we come in and repackage that food into smaller portions so that it can be frozen, it's labeled, and then that goes out to either families that need it or goes out to member agencies where they can cook it and serve it or hand it out frozen. That food doesn't sit here in the food bank for more than a couple of days.
Well, the food bank is our largest stream of food, and food is what we do here, so we're pretty dependent on them. When we include commodities, the food that we get through the food bank ends up being about 70% of the non-purchased food that we use in a year. We have such a relationship with them that we can call and say, hey, we're really gonna need X, whatever it is. And can you guys keep an eye out for that? And so we'll sometimes get a phone call, hey, we've got a whole lot of this. We know this is something that you typically can use. I think we all kind of see ourselves more as part of the same team.
The community came to love us, and one of the reasons was because we worked so hard to be collaborative.
I think that's what's expected of us. I mean, we are a mission-driven organization, and our mission is to help our agencies meet the growing food assistance needs. And it's always a push-pull between it would be great if we could do this and it would be great if we could do that, and then when we either get an opportunity or we figure out a way that we can meet that need, then it's all systems go, and we're going to do that.
We served so many agencies, not-for-profits, that, you know, giving $1 to the food bank, you were also helping anyone that was getting food from the Salvation Army, anyone that was eating at the community kitchen.
The group that organizes the Soup Bowl has been a godsend to us financially with the amount of money they raise every year.
So we had this great idea to combine art and activism, and Hoosier Hills Food Bank is where we went.
And we were very excited about it because it seemed to bring together really wonderful elements. The artistic community, the community of local restaurants and bakeries, as well as the people who were working very hard within the community of Bloomington to help folks who were in insecure food situations. It's been wonderful because it started small. It started in a church basement and with a handful of people who came together and made it happen, but very quickly it expanded.
Speaking financially, that's one of the biggest fundraiser that we have. And that, you know, talking about team support again, that's where it comes into play. You've got these key members in our community. You've got all these local restaurants who donate soup. You've got all these local grocery stores who donate bread and cookies. And it comes together in really a great way. At the convention center, we'll always have music and soup, and everybody's enjoying each other's company. And it's all in response to hunger relief.
I used to just want to close our doors. We want to end hunger and be done. And I said that for many years, you know, let's get this problem solved and move on to something else. I began to recognize that there was always going to be food waste. And then at some point, I guess I recognized that there were always going to be some people, you know, even if we were handing out money, there were always going to be some circumstances and situations by which someone wouldn't have the financial resources they needed to feed themselves. And I sort of knew at year 15 that I needed to put in 20 years at the food bank, but I also sort of knew I was tired and struggling, and the food bank was outgrowing me because it was bigger than me and it deserved better than me. And I had grown it up that way, and I knew it to be true.
One door closes, another door opens wide.
It was a very scary time for the board because Amy had been, at the food bank from day one, and I was a member of the search committee, and we had a hard time finding someone, and we were really getting nervous. And then Julio came to the front, and we didn't even hesitate because his reputation preceded him.
I really probably don't think I felt like Hoosier Hills Food Bank had made it until they hired Julio.
It was good when Julio came because Julio liked the food bank, and that made a big difference. He worked as a director for the community kitchen for a number of years and had partnered with us, and so did know who we were, and he really wanted this particular job, and he liked the food bank the way it was, so it was good from the get-go.
I was very fortunate to come into an organization that already had a very strong reputation in the community and had a lot of community support. Amy's years here made a huge difference, and the work that she and Dan and the other staff and board members over the years did to build this organization up as something that people supported and knew was accountable and were willing to invest in. What I was hoping to do when I came in was try to take that to the next level and build even more support so that we could do more as an organization. It was really my job to let more people learn about what we were doing and why it was important to support us and how much more we could do with more support. We've had to employ a lot of different strategies to get more food in here. A lot of companies have tightened up their process so that they have less waste, which is a good thing. So there was a little bit of a downslide on that area. The retail partners have also tried to step things up. So we've been able to increase the amount of food that we're bringing in through retail outlets, and more of those have come on board over the past 5 or 6 years. Another strategy was to just increase the visibility of the organization in the community, to let more people know what we're doing and how important it is to support us and what the level of need is out there. And that helps to do things like generate more food drives and more businesses and more individuals and schools getting involved and helping to bring food into us. Another really key thing that we did about 5 years ago was we actually started purchasing food. The donated food just wasn't meeting the level of need, and it was clear that it wasn't going to. So we started dedicating some of our fundraising efforts to actually going out and purchasing food, and we do a lot more of that now than we used to. That amount's increased in each of the last 5 years. Some other things that we've done were to try and get more fresh food coming into the food bank. We started a gleaning program a few years ago.
The way it started is we were getting calls from local farmers in our service area. They would plant in their fields and then they couldn't actually harvest all of it, so they were always asking, can you bring some people out and harvest the rest of my field so it doesn't just go to waste? So we decided to do the gleaning program as a way to procure more fresh produce.
And one of those relationships, those gleaning relationships, grew into a garden relationship.
We're lucky enough to get a parcel of land donated to us from the Strangers Hill Organic farm, and they gave us a little portion of their field. So we actually did some planning and started planting our own product there. And that program has grown tremendously in the 3 years that we've done it. Our garden program means fresh produce. They don't get a whole lot of fresh produce at the agencies. I know a lot of the agencies give really high remarks on those and really appreciate it, and they know their clients really appreciate the fresh produce too.
We took on some other efforts like one of the USDA commodity programs that used to be handled by gleaners, the CSFP program.
TFAP is the Emergency Food Assistance Program. What that is it's the same kind of food that comes in for CSFP, but it's primarily for food pantries and soup kitchens and shelters in all of our service area. It's a much, much bigger program than CSFP, and about 40% of our agencies get TFAP. I think it would be a lot harder for them to meet the need. I mean, they're not meeting the need right now.
We really had to grow the amount of work that we were doing in our outlying counties. In addition to serving Monroe County, we serve 5 other counties.
I participate in the mobile pantry, in particular the one in Mitchell. And to be able to participate in a pantry like that and see some of the clients and what we're doing firsthand is a really special thing for me. And not only is it something that I enjoy doing, but it keeps me motivated for what I do here at Hoosier Hills Food Bank. And in particular, just seeing some of the smaller families that have children, or you know, you might see single mothers come in, and just to see their faces and to know that what we're doing is impacting, that they're going to be able to eat that night. We've seen clients that actually, you know, will take maybe some of the fresh product and eat it outside, and I know that, you know, that kind of tugs at your emotions a little bit, but you also know that you're helping out right then, and it kind of reminds me that it's an immediate need.
Running the food bank, we're running a pretty large organization here, and a lot of people really don't realize that. They're kind of taken aback when we talk about that to some degree. But the fact of the matter is we distribute 6 tons of food a day, and that takes a lot of infrastructure. It takes a fleet of vehicles, it takes a warehouse, it takes staff, it takes forklifts and equipment, training, all sorts of things like that.
We use around 3,000 volunteers. That number has been actually increasing over the past couple of years. We get volunteers in here to help us out on a daily basis, whether it's in the office or whether it's in the warehouse, and we depend on them. We're in a community that helping each other out is important overall. It's always been that way in Bloomington and Monroe County.
Financial support is, we have a lot of small donors in the community, and very loyal small donors who donate food and money, but they might donate $5 or $10 or $20, whereas some other not-for-profits might get $1,000 checks, you know, and but they might get $1,000 check, and we get $500 $10 checks. So it's actually better, I think, to have a lot of small donors and wide-based support in the community than just a few large ones. And we have some large ones too, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I'm amazed at donations we get from low-income people, even, that you'd think would be our clientele, maybe, but it's just amazing.
I knew that this little organization that Dan and I had grown with the help of so many was now a big organization.
We were distributing about 1.6 million pounds of food, and in the 5 or 6 years that I've been here, that has doubled to over 3.2 million pounds of food, and even that is not enough.
Julio, his leadership really comforts me. I feel really positive about the growth of the food bank.
I don't consider what I do a job. I consider that I've been temporarily entrusted with a really important community asset, and that it's my job to steward that asset and help it remain strong and to grow.
I'd like to see the food bank stable and able to grow in exactly the direction it's going.
They do a very good, quiet job, and they provide a very valuable service that I think a lot of the people in the community know about. It's always been a very positive thing for anybody to know something about the food bank, but it's amazing to me just how low-key and how humble it is, and I'm very proud of that.
What we do has an impact on people's lives every day. People are depending on us to be able to eat.
The whole thing is really a favorite memory. It's just a really successful project.
But I've seen is from a very small operation to a very large operation, serving many counties. And so I think that they've done right well.
In reality, this is and has been one of the most vibrant food banks in the state. It'll never be the biggest, but the commitment to serving the community, the commitment to operating ethically, and to be honest in its interaction with other food banks and with its member charities has been one that I have never questioned. And that makes them both unique and outstanding in my mind.
I would like for everyone to know that the food bank exists, that it's a good organization, it's worthy of your dollar, it'll do the right thing with your money, it needs your food resources, it needs your goodwill. I would like for everyone to know that Hoosier Hills Food Bank is here for them.
It's been amazing watching the Hoosier Hills Food Bank grow and become more efficient and being able to serve more people. The hard part is that it's needed.
If you ask, would we be happy if hunger ends and the Hoosier Hills Food Bank is no longer needed? Of course. We hope it ends tomorrow, and we hope those guys find other jobs.
I just want to say to anybody that's volunteered, donated, worked, helped out Hoosier Hills Food Bank in any way, thank you from the bottom of all our hearts, because it's really what has made us be who we are today. And that's what's really special about Bloomington and Monroe County, is that all you guys help out, and that's what keeps us going.
Bloomington is a unique community that has supported lots of ideas over the years. I think one of their better ones was Hoosier Hills Food Bank. I appreciate everyone who contributed, because you have created a successful organization, and that will live long beyond your effort on that day or that month or that year. And people in your community who cannot afford to buy the food that they need will be better served because of your efforts. Thank you.